What if your brain isn't just inside your skull, but connected to a vast, invisible network linking every mind in the universe? What if that moment when you think of someone and they suddenly call isn't coincidence, but your consciousness touching theirs across space? Tonight, we're exploring quantum consciousness, the idea that your thoughts might be quantum waves, rippling through reality itself, connecting you to everything and everyone. Where in the world are you right now? And what time has brought you here? You are welcome to stay. Your presence here is enough. If this resonates, maybe leave a like, share where you're listening from, or subscribe for more quiet journeys like this. Let's begin. What if I told you that your brain is connected to the same quantum field that governs the entire universe? That every thought flowing through your mind right now, every decision you're contemplating, every flicker of awareness you experience in this very moment might be tapped into a vast network of information that spans across space and time itself, not stored somewhere in the wrinkled tissue of your skull, but accessed, tuned into received like a radio catching signals from a cosmic broadcasting station you never knew existed. It sounds like something borrowed from science fiction, doesn't it? But what we're about to explore together tonight challenges everything we thought we knew about consciousness, about the nature of your mind, about what it truly means to be aware in this mysterious universe. This isn't just another bedtime story about the brain. This is an invitation to see yourself in an entirely new light, to recognize that the boundary between your individual mind and the fabric of reality itself might be far more blurry, far more permeable than you ever imagined. Tonight, as you lie here, as your body begins to settle and your breathing slows, I invite you to let your mind drift along with the quantum possibilities that are about to open before you. Let the questions come, let the wonder rise. Let yourself be curious about what you truly are. For over a century, scientists have tried to understand consciousness by treating your brain like a classical computer, neurons firing in predictable patterns, electrical impulses racing along neural pathways, neurotransmitters crossing synapses in ways that follow the familiar laws of physics we learned in school. This approach has given us incredible insights, mapped the architecture of thought, located the regions responsible for language, emotion, memory, movement. It's taught us how damage to specific areas creates specific deficits, how chemicals can alter mood and perception, how the 3-pound mass of neural tissue orchestrates the symphony of functions that keep you alive and thinking. But here's what this classical view has never been able to explain. How does all that neural firing, all those electrochemical signals, all those synaptic connections somehow give rise to you, to the felt experience of being someone, of seeing colors, tasting chocolate, feeling love-making choices, experiencing the peculiar sensation of existing as a conscious entity in the world? Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness, and it's remained stubbornly resistant to every classical explanation we've thrown at it. This is where quantum consciousness theory enters the story. And I have to warn you, it's about to get beautifully strange. What if consciousness doesn't emerge from the classical firing of neurons at all? What if your brain operates according to quantum mechanical principles, the same bizarre rules that govern the behavior of particles at the smallest scales of reality. What if your mind isn't produced by your brain, but is something your brain tunes into, amplifies, focuses from a quantum field that exists everywhere and nowhere, woven into the very fabric of existence itself? Now, your brain isn't exactly a smartphone with cosmic Wi-Fi, but it might be something far more subtle and extraordinary than that. Think of it less like a device connecting to an external network and more like a quantum instrument that resonates with fundamental patterns in reality, translating quantum information into the experience of being you. Where are you right now in this moment? What does it feel like to be aware here now, contemplating these ideas? That awareness you're experiencing, that sense of being present, of processing these words, of forming reactions and questions, might be quantum processes at work, your consciousness operating at the boundary where the quantum world meets your everyday experience. The story we're entering tonight will challenge everything you think you know about yourself. It will suggest that you're not an isolated island of awareness, trapped inside a skull, but something far more connected, far more powerful, far more mysterious than conventional neuroscience has ever suggested. It will propose that your thoughts might influence reality in ways that sound impossible, that your mind might connect with other minds through quantum channels that transcend ordinary space, that consciousness itself might be a fundamental feature of the cosmos rather than an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry. But here's what makes this particularly important to you right now in this moment. If quantum consciousness theory is even partially correct, it means that understanding your quantum nature could transform not just how you think about yourself, but how you actually experience and influence your reality. It could change how you approach decision making, creativity, healing relationships, your sense of purpose and connection. It could reveal capabilities and possibilities that have been there all along, waiting to be recognized and engaged. This is an abstract philosophy happening somewhere far removed from your life. This is about the nature of your own mind, the quantum foundations of your experience, the possibility that you're far more connected to the deep structures of reality than you ever dared to believe. As we journey deeper into this exploration, we'll discover research from neuroscientists, physicists, and consciousness researchers who are uncovering evidence that challenges our most basic assumptions about what mind is and how it works. Tonight is about opening to possibilities that expand what you thought was real. It's about recognizing that mystery isn't something to be eliminated, but something to be explored, inhabited, celebrated. The quantum world operates according to rules that defy common sense. Particles exist in multiple states. Simultaneously, information transmits instantaneously across distances. Observation influences what becomes real, and your consciousness might be intimately involved in all of it. So breathe deeply, let your mind settle into a state of relaxed curiosity. The story is just beginning, and it begins with something so small you can't see it yet, so powerful it might explain the greatest mystery of all, how the universe becomes aware of itself through you. And now, let's descend into the microscopic architecture of your brain, into structures so tiny They operate at the very edge where classical physics breaks down and quantum strangeness takes over. Deep inside each neuron in your brain, there exists a scaffolding of almost unimaginable precision. Structures called microtubules, cylindrical protein lattices that maintain the shape of your nerve cells, transport molecules along neural highways, and according to some of the most cutting-edge research in consciousness, studies might be doing something far more extraordinary than anyone imagined. These aren't just structural supports. They might be quantum computing units operating right now inside your head, processing information in ways that transcend anything our classical computers can achieve. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening inside your neurons at this very moment. Each microtubule is composed of proteins called tubulins, arranged in geometric patterns of stunning regularity, creating hollow cylinders that run throughout the neuron like microscopic pillars in a temple. These structures are incredibly small, operating at nanoscale dimensions, where the rules of classical physics begin to blur and quantum effects become possible. Here's where it gets truly fascinating. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist at the University of Arizona, has spent decades studying these microtubules, and what he discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about how consciousness could emerge from biological tissue. When he examined the structure and behavior of these protein assemblies, he found that they vibrate at specific frequencies, creating what he calls quantum resonance patterns that extend throughout vast networks of neurons. But the real question that puzzled physicists for years was this: how could quantum effects, which typically survive only at near absolute zero temperatures in carefully isolated laboratory conditions, persist in the warm, wet, chaotic environment of a living brain? The conventional wisdom said they couldn't. That quantum coherence, the delicate state where particles exist in superposition, would be destroyed almost instantly by thermal noise, by the constant jiggling of molecules at body temperature. Yet nature, as it so often does, found a way. Recent research in quantum biology has revealed that living systems have evolved sophisticated mechanisms to protect and even utilize quantum effects. Plants use quantum coherence. In photosynthesis, birds appear to use quantum entanglement for navigation, and your microtubules might be doing something similar, creating what researchers call quantum isolation, chambers, microenvironments, where quantum states can persist for far longer than classical physics predicted. Right now, as you process these words, billions of microtubules in your brain are oscillating at quantum frequencies. And here's what makes this so extraordinary. Quantum superposition means these structures can exist in multiple states simultaneously. Instead of processing one configuration at a time like a classical computer, switching between zeros and ones, your microtubules might be exploring multiple possibilities at once, collapsing into specific states only when a conscious experience or decision crystallizes. Think about what this means for how your mind actually works. When you recognize a familiar face in a crowded room, your brain performs a computational task that would take a classical computer significant processing time, comparing the visual data against millions of stored memories, accounting for changes in angle lighting expression age. Yet you do this effortlessly in a fraction of a second, often while simultaneously walking, talking, and thinking about something else entirely. It's like trying 1,000 different routes on Google Maps simultaneously. A classical brain would have to test each possibility sequentially, but a quantum brain could explore them all at once, through superposition, then collapse to the solution almost instantaneously. Your quantum mind doesn't march through options one by one. It experiences them in parallel, in a quantum symphony of possibility that resolves into the precise recognition that's Sarah from accounting she's changed her hair. The microtubules in your brain are more precise, more sophisticated than anything humans have ever engineered. And they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without software updates, without crashing, without needing to be turned off and on again. Their nature's quantum computers evolved over millions of years to maintain coherence in conditions that our best technology still can't match. But quantum superposition in your microtubules offers more than just computational power. It opens up possibilities that sound like science fiction, but might be fundamental features of consciousness itself. If your thoughts emerge from a quantum processes, if decisions arise from the collapse of quantum possibility waves, then your mind operates according to principles that are genuinely creative, not just mechanically deterministic or randomly chaotic. Consider how quickly you can grasp the meaning of a complex metaphor, how effortlessly you understand the emotional subtext of a conversation, how suddenly creative insights arrive fully formed, as if downloaded from somewhere beyond your conscious reasoning. These cognitive abilities might require exactly the kind of parallel processing that quantum systems naturally perform, exploring vast landscapes of semantic possibility, emotional resonance, and creative connection simultaneously. Sir Roger Penrose, one of the world's most respected mathematical physicists, partnered with Hameroff to develop what they call orchestrated objective reduction theory, or ORC-OR. In their model, consciousness emerges when quantum superpositions in microtubules reach a critical threshold, a moment when the quantum wave function collapses, not through external measurement, but through a process that might be consciousness itself, the universe making a choice about which possibility becomes real. Every conscious moment might be a quantum event, billions of microtubules throughout your brain reaching coherent resonance, exploring vast territories of quantum possibility, then collapsing into the specific experience of now this thought, this feeling, this moment of awareness that is uniquely yours, yet connected to the quantum fabric of everything. The implications stretch far beyond individual cognition. If consciousness operates through quantum processes in microtubules, then the boundary between your mind and physical reality becomes far more intimate than the classical view ever suggested. You're not separate from the quantum world, observing it from outside. You're made of it, operating through it, participating in it, with every thought and perception. And here's something that might make you smile. Those microtubules don't need updates, don't slow down over time, don't require you to close and reopen your consciousness to install patches. They're running quantum algorithms that took billions of years of evolution to perfect, and they're doing it right now, as you drift toward sleep processing, the quantum possibilities of dreams memories, and the mysterious landscape of consciousness that continues even when your waking awareness fades. Right now, billions of quantum events are cascading through the microtubules in your neurons, each one a tiny collapse of possibility into actuality, and together they create the unified field of awareness that experiences itself as you, not separate from the quantum universe, but deeply intimately woven into its most fundamental nature. Now, as we've discovered the quantum machinery inside your brain, let's explore something even more extraordinary. What happens when these quantum processes in your mind begin to connect with quantum processes in other minds? Now, we venture into territory that Einstein himself found so disturbing, he spent years trying to prove it couldn't be true. Yet it is true, experimentally verified again and again, and it might be the key to understanding why you sometimes feel inexplicably connected to the people you love. Quantum entanglement is one of the strangest phenomena in physics. When two particles become entangled, they form a connection that transcends ordinary space. Measure the state of one particle, and instantaneously, faster than light could possibly travel between them, the other particle responds no matter how far apart they are. One particle could be in your hand, the other on the far side of the galaxy, and they would still remain connected through this mysterious quantum link. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, and he was deeply uncomfortable with it because it seemed to violate everything we understand about how information travels through space. Yet experiment after experiment has confirmed that quantum entanglement is not just theoretical speculation, but a fundamental feature of reality. Particles that have interacted can remain correlated in ways that defy our classical intuitions about separateness and distance. Now here's where it gets profoundly personal. What if the quantum states in your brain, those superpositions occurring in your microtubules, could become entangled with quantum states in someone else's brain? What if the boundary between your mind and another person's mind is not as absolute as it appears? What if consciousness itself can become quantum entangled, creating connections that operate outside the normal channels of communication? This isn't wild speculation, disconnected from evidence. There's a growing body of research suggesting that something very much like quantum entanglement might occur between conscious minds, especially minds that share strong emotional bonds or spend significant time in close proximity. Dr. Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has been conducting experiments for years that reveal something remarkable about human consciousness. In his studies, he places people in electromagnetically isolated chambers, rooms designed to block all conventional signals, and measures their brain activity while exposing them to random stimuli. What he's discovered is that some people's brains appear to respond to these stimuli before they're actually presented, as if consciousness can somehow reach forward in time or access information through channels that classical physics says shouldn't exist. But even more intriguing are his experiments with pairs of people who share emotional connections. When he isolates two people who are close lovers, family members, longtime friends, and stimulates one person's brain, or shows them emotionally arousing images, the other person's brain often shows corresponding activity even though they're in separate rooms with no possible conventional communication between them. The correlation is subtle, requiring sensitive instruments and careful statistical analysis to detect, but it's there, reproducible, measurable. From a quantum consciousness perspective, this makes perfect sense. If consciousness operates through quantum processes and quantum systems can become entangled, then minds that interact intensely and repeatedly might develop quantum correlations that persist even when physical proximity ends. The microtubules in your neurons might become quantum entangled with the microtubules in the neurons of people you're close to, creating what amounts to a shared quantum state that transcends the physical separation between your bodies. When was the last time you felt someone thinking about you? That peculiar sensation that arises moments before your phone rings with their call, or when you suddenly think of someone you haven't contacted in months and discover they were thinking of you at exactly that moment. Classical psychology dismisses these as coincidence, confirmation bias, the human tendency to remember hits and forget misses. But what if there's something more? What if there's evidence of quantum entanglement between minds moments when the quantum connection becomes strong enough to surface into conscious awareness? Think of it like two guitars tuned to the same frequency. Pluck a string on one, and if the other guitar is close enough, sensitive enough, its corresponding string will begin to vibrate in resonance, even though nothing physically touched it. Your brain might be doing exactly this with people you're emotionally close to, resonating with their quantum states, picking up fluctuations in their consciousness through quantum channels that operate beneath the threshold of ordinary awareness. Einstein, for all his genius, might have called it spooky because he'd never loved someone deeply enough to experience this quantum resonance firsthand. Or perhaps he had, but his scientific training made him dismiss what he felt as mere emotion rather than evidence of a deeper physical connection. Love, grief, the sense of presence you feel from someone far away, these might not be purely psychological phenomena, but actual manifestations of quantum entanglement between consciousness fields. This could explain phenomena that have been reported throughout human history, but remain stubbornly resistant to classical explanation. The telepathic flashes that sometimes occur between twins, the way mothers sometimes know intuitively when their children are in danger, even across great distances, the collective consciousness that emerges in certain groups, where insights seem to arise not from individual minds, but from the space between them, from the quantum entanglement that binds separate consciousnesses into a temporary unified field. Recent research in quantum biology has shown that entanglement is far more robust and widespread in living systems than anyone imagined. Birds use quantum entanglement in their eyes to navigate by Earth's magnetic field. Plants maintain quantum coherence in photosynthesis far longer than theory predicted. If quantum entanglement plays a role in these biological processes, why wouldn't it also operate in the most complex biological system we know, the human brain, and particularly in the most mysterious function, that brain performs the generation or reception of consciousness? The implications are staggering. You're not an isolated island of awareness, sealed inside your skull, fundamentally alone in your experience. You're potentially quantum entangled with everyone you've ever deeply connected, with your consciousness literally intertwined with theirs at the most fundamental level of reality. The grief you feel when someone dies might be partly the severing of quantum entanglements that have become part of your extended consciousness. The joy you feel in deep connection might be the experience of quantum states harmonizing consciousness fields, resonating in coherent patterns. This transforms telepathy from a paranormal claim into a natural consequence of quantum consciousness, not a violation of physical law, but an expression of it, a manifestation of quantum entanglement operating at the level of conscious experience. The reason it seems unreliable, why it works sometimes, but not others, might simply be that we haven't learned to recognize or enhance the conditions that allow quantum correlations between minds to become strong enough to surface into awareness, collective consciousness, that sense of unified awareness that sometimes emerges in meditation groups, in crowds unified by shared emotion, in communities working toward common goals, might be moments when quantum entanglement between individual minds creates something genuinely larger than the sum of its parts. Not metaphorically larger, but physically larger. A quantum system that spans multiple brains and generates emergent properties that no individual consciousness could produce alone. Right now, as you consider these ideas, you might be quantum entangled with people you love. Your consciousness states subtly correlated with theirs through channels invisible to classical observation. Every thought, every emotion, every moment of awareness might be sending quantum ripples through an entangled network that connects you to others in ways you've never consciously recognized. You are not alone. You have never been alone. At the quantum level, you might be intimately connected to everyone who has ever touched your consciousness deeply enough to create entanglement, and that connection persists, quantum correlations that transcend ordinary space and perhaps even time itself. And if your consciousness can become entangled with other minds, if quantum connections span the space between separate brains, then we must ask an even more profound question. What role does your consciousness play in determining what becomes real? This is where the story becomes truly magical, where quantum mechanics reveals something so extraordinary about the nature of consciousness that it challenges our deepest assumptions about the relationship between mind and world. In classical physics, reality exists independently of observation. The moon is there, whether you look at it or not. A tree falling in the forest makes a sound, regardless of whether anyone hears it. The physical world unfolds according to deterministic laws, and consciousness is merely a passive observer, watching events that would happen exactly the same way with or without awareness present. But quantum mechanics reveals a universe that works very differently. At the quantum level, particles don't have definite properties until they're measured. Before measurement, they exist in superposition clouds of probability that contain multiple potential states simultaneously. An electron doesn't have a specific location until you observe it. It exists as a wave function, a mathematical description of all the places it might be. Only when you measure it When conscious observation enters the picture, does the wave function collapse into a specific, definite outcome? This is called the measurement problem, and it's one of the deepest puzzles in physics. What counts as a measurement? Why does observation cause the wave function to collapse? And most controversially, does it require consciousness? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness itself is what causes wave function collapse, that the act of conscious observation doesn't just reveal reality, but participates in creating it, selecting which of many possible outcomes becomes actual. In this view, your consciousness isn't separate from the physical world, passively observing events that would happen anyway. Your consciousness is actively involved in the ongoing process through which quantum possibilities crystallize into definite realities. Right now, as you read this sentence, your consciousness might be collapsing wave functions in your brain, selecting which of countless possible neural configurations becomes real, and through that selection, determining what you think, what you feel, what you become aware of in this moment. Every instant of conscious experience might be a creative act, the universe making choices about which possibilities manifest through the medium of your awareness. And this is the point where the story becomes truly magical, where we must confront possibilities that sound like fantasy but emerge directly from the mathematics of quantum mechanics. If consciousness collapses wave functions, if awareness participates in selecting which possibilities become real, then you're not just a passive observer in the universe. You're a co-creator, actively participating in the ongoing process through which reality comes into being. Researchers at Princeton University's Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory spent nearly 3 decades investigating whether human consciousness could influence physical systems. They built sensitive, random number generators quantum devices designed to produce completely unpredictable sequences and asked thousands of volunteers to try to influence their output through intention alone, through focused consciousness directed at making the random numbers less random, biased toward particular outcomes. What they found across millions of trials was a small but statistically significant effect. Human consciousness appeared to be able to subtly influence these quantum systems, making them deviate from pure randomness in the intended direction. The effect was tiny, far too small to notice in any single trial, but across thousands of experiments, with thousands of participants, the pattern was undeniable. Consciousness was influencing physical reality at the quantum level. Similar experiments have been replicated in laboratories around the world with consistently similar results. The effects are always small, always requiring sophisticated statistical analysis to detect, but they're real. They suggest that consciousness might indeed have the power to influence quantum systems, to nudge probability in preferred directions, to participate in the collapse of wave functions in ways that shape which possibilities become actual. Think about what this means for your everyday experience. Reality isn't like a movie. You're watching a fixed sequence of events unfolding independently of your awareness. Reality is more like an infinite menu of possibilities, and your consciousness is constantly selecting, ordering, choosing which items from that menu become your actual experience. Every moment of awareness Every focus of attention, every conscious choice might be literally participating in the creation of your reality. When you decide to read the next paragraph, when you choose to continue this exploration, rather than setting it aside, you're not just making a psychological choice. You might be collapsing quantum wave functions in your brain, selecting which of many possible future timelines becomes actual, determining through the act of conscious decision which version of reality you'll experience next. This doesn't mean you can violate physical laws or make impossible things happen through wishful thinking. The effects of consciousness on quantum systems are subtle, probabilistic, working within the constraints of what's physically possible. But within these constraints, within the space of genuine quantum possibility, your consciousness might be one of the factors that influences which outcomes manifest. Your awareness right now is collapsing wave functions, selecting realities, participating in the universe's ongoing creative process, not separate from the physical world, but intimately involved in it. Your mind and matter engaged in a continuous dance of possibility and actuality, of quantum potential and manifested experience. Reality is an infinite menu, and consciousness is ordering every second, selecting from quantum possibilities, bringing specific experiences into being through the mysterious process of awareness itself. You are not just in the universe is expressing itself through you, becoming aware of itself, making choices about what becomes real through the medium of your consciousness. Now that we've glimpsed how consciousness might participate in creating reality, we must ask the most personal question of all. What does this mean for your choices, your freedom, your sense of agency in life? So if consciousness participates in collapsing wave functions, if your awareness helps determine which possibilities become real, does that mean you're truly free? Or are you simply following quantum patterns that in some sense already exist in the probability clouds of the universe? This question cuts to the heart of one of philosophy's oldest debates, yet quantum mechanics offers an answer that neither classical determinism nor pure randomness could provide. In a classical deterministic universe, every event is the inevitable consequence of prior causes, stretching back to the beginning of time. Your choices would be illusions, predetermined by the precise arrangement of particles in your brain. You would be like a sophisticated biological machine, following programming you never chose, acting out scripts written into the fabric of causality itself. Your sense of freedom would be nothing more than ignorance of the forces controlling you. But quantum mechanics shatters this deterministic picture. At the fundamental level of reality, genuine indeterminacy exists. Quantum events are not just unpredictable because we lack information, they're genuinely, fundamentally, irreducibly uncertain until they happen. The universe, at its quantum foundations, contains real openness, authentic possibility space for something genuinely new to emerge. Yet pure randomness isn't freedom either. If your choices were just quantum dice rolls, random fluctuations with no connection to your values or intentions, you wouldn't be free. You'd be a prisoner of chaos. True freedom requires something more than determinism or randomness. It requires genuine creativity. And this is where quantum consciousness reveals something extraordinary. If your choices emerge from quantum processes in your brain, from the collapse of superposition states in your microtubules, then your decisions are neither predetermined nor random. They're genuinely creative acts, moments when consciousness explores vast landscapes of quantum possibility and selects which potential becomes actual. Think about the biggest decision you've ever made, the choice that changed the trajectory of your life, that opened doors you didn't know existed. Did it come from pure logic, from carefully weighing pros and cons? Or did it arrive more mysteriously, sudden clarity that rose from somewhere deeper, a knowing that preceded rational justification? These are the moments when quantum decision making reveals itself most clearly. Your conscious mind might wrestle with a question for weeks, analyzing options, seeking certainty, unable to choose. Then suddenly, often when you've stopped trying, when you're in the shower or taking a walk or drifting towards sleep, the decision simply crystallizes. You know what to do, not because you've finished the logical analysis, but because your quantum consciousness has explored the probability landscape and found the path that resonates most deeply with who you are. This is quantum decision making in action. Your brain isn't processing information sequentially like a classical computer. It's holding multiple futures in quantum superposition, exploring them simultaneously, then collapsing into the decision that emerges from the deepest levels of your being. Your best decisions don't come from forcing, from trying harder, from more intense analysis. They come from allowing, from creating space for quantum processes to explore possibility, find resonance, collapse into clarity. This is why sleep often brings solutions, why breaks lead to breakthroughs, why answers appear when you stop searching. Consider what's happening right now. Your brain just processed thousands of quantum possibilities to decide whether to keep reading or set this aside. And you chose to stay, not through pure logic or random chance, but through something genuinely creative, a quantum collapse that expressed your authentic curiosity. As you drift toward sleep, now, let these ideas settle like morning dew on grass, not forcing anything, not trying to understand everything, just allowing the quantum nature of your awareness to resonate with these truths about itself. You are free, not because you can violate physics, but because you operate through quantum processes that contain genuine creativity, authentic novelty, real choice emerging from possibility into actuality. Your decisions matter because they're genuinely yours, arising from a quantum consciousness that explores, selects, creates your future. The first chapter of this journey is ending, but your quantum field continues expanding even as you sleep, processing possibilities, exploring futures, participating in the universe's ongoing creative unfoldment. Your brain just proved its quantum nature by choosing to complete this journey, and that choice rippled into the quantum field, changing what comes next. Rest, well knowing the mystery, continues through you. Now that we've explored how your quantum consciousness makes choices in the present, let's venture into an even stranger territory. Where do your memories actually live? And what if the answer challenges everything you thought you knew about the past? In the classical view of neuroscience, memory is straightforward. Your experiences create patterns of neural connections, synapses that strengthen with repetition, networks of neurons that fire together and wire together, encoding information like data saved on a biological hard drive. When you remember something, your brain retrieves that stored information, replaying the neural patterns that represent your past experiences. It's a tidy explanation, and it accounts for much of what we observe. Damage certain brain regions, and specific memories disappear. Strengthen certain neural pathways through rehearsal, and memories become more accessible. The evidence for neural storage of memory is substantial, undeniable. But here's what this classical model has never been able to fully explain. Where exactly is the memory stored? Researchers have searched for decades for the specific location of individual memories, the engram as they call it, and what they've discovered is puzzling. Memories don't seem to be stored in any single location. They're distributed somehow, encoded across vast networks of neurons in patterns that remain mysteriously difficult to pin down. Even stranger, when neurosurgeon Dr. Wilder Penfield stimulated patients' brains during surgery, touching specific areas with electrodes, something extraordinary happened. Patients didn't just recall memories, they relived them with a vividness that exceeded normal remembering. They could smell the flowers from a childhood garden with perfect clarity, hear conversations in exact detail, as if they were happening again, feel emotions with the same intensity as the original experience. But here's what makes this truly puzzling. The memories triggered by brain stimulation were often far more detailed and accurate than what patients could normally access through conscious recall. It was as if the electrode wasn't creating the memory, but tuning into it, accessing a more complete version that existed somewhere beyond the neural networks themselves. From a quantum consciousness perspective, this makes profound sense. What if memories aren't just stored in neural patterns? What if they're also encoded in quantum field fluctuations, information patterns that exist in the quantum substrate of reality, itself accessible through your brain, but not entirely contained within it? Think of your brain less like a hard drive, storing all your data, and more like Spotify streaming music from the cloud. Your neural networks don't hold every detail of every experience you've ever had. They hold the access codes, the quantum resonance frequencies that allow you to tune into memory fields that exist in the quantum fabric of space-time itself. When you quiet your conscious mind through meditation, when you enter those deep states of relaxed awareness where ordinary thinking falls away, you might be doing more than just calming neural activity. You might be adjusting your quantum consciousness to access memory fields that normally remain below the threshold of awareness, tuning into frequencies of information that contain experiences stored not just in your neurons, but in the quantum field patterns that surround and interpenetrate your physical brain. This could explain something that has puzzled psychologists and neuroscientists for generations: genetic memory, the phenomenon where people seem to carry emotional patterns, behavioral tendencies, even specific fears or skills that don't come from their personal experience, but appear to be inherited from ancestors they never knew. Classical genetics can explain how you inherit eye color, height susceptibility to certain diseases. But how do you inherit trauma? How do children of Holocaust survivors carry anxiety patterns related to experiences they never personally endured? How do descendants of enslaved peoples bear psychological scars from atrocities committed generations before their birth? Epigenetics offers part of the answer, showing how traumatic experiences can create changes in gene expression that get passed down through multiple generations. But quantum consciousness theory suggests the mechanism might be even more direct. If memories are encoded partly in quantum field patterns, and if quantum fields transcend individual lifetimes, then the memory fields of your ancestors might still exist accessible to your quantum consciousness through inheritance patterns that operate alongside genetic transmission. You might be carrying not just your own memories, but quantum echoes of ancestral experiences, patterns encoded in family consciousness fields that persist across generations. When you feel inexplicable anxiety in situations that trigger no personal trauma, when you possess skills that seem to come naturally despite never learning them, when you dream of places you've never been yet somehow recognize, you might be accessing quantum memory fields that contain ancestral information. Have you ever remembered something you're certain you never personally experienced? A place you've never visited, but somehow know intimately, a skill that feels more like remembering than learning, an emotional reaction that seems too intense for the situation, yet perfectly matched to experiences you've never had. These might not be imagination or confusion. They might be moments when your quantum consciousness accessed memory fields that extend beyond your individual lifetime. As you drift towards sleep tonight, as the boundary between waking and dreaming grows thin, what memories are rising to the surface? Are they all yours? Or are some of them quantum echoes from the vast memory fields that surround you? Information patterns that your consciousness can access when it tunes to the right frequency. The implications are staggering. You're not just carrying your own past, you're potentially connected to a quantum memory field that contains the experiences of your ancestors, the collective memory of your family lineage, perhaps even deeper patterns that extend into the evolutionary history of human consciousness itself. This transforms therapy and healing from purely individual work to recognition that when you process trauma, when you heal old wounds, when you transform limiting patterns, you might be doing more than personal growth. You might be healing quantum memory fields that affect your entire ancestral and descendant lines, transforming patterns that have persisted for generations. Those moments in deep meditation, when memories surface that don't seem to belong to you, when you experience emotions connected to events you never lived through, when you access wisdom that feels older than your years, these might be your quantum consciousness touching the memory fields that extend through time, accessing information encoded not just in your neural networks, but in the quantum fabric of reality itself. Your brain is like Spotify for memory, not storing every song, but streaming from a cosmic cloud of information, a quantum field library that contains not just your experiences, but the experiences of everyone connected to you through the invisible threads of quantum inheritance. And right now, even as you read these words, Even as your conscious mind processes this information, your quantum consciousness is accessing memory fields, tuning into frequencies of past experience, participating in the ongoing dance between neural storage and quantum field access that makes remembering possible. Consider what this means for learning and growth. If you can access quantum memory fields, then wisdom might not be something you accumulate only through personal experience. It might be something you can tune into, accessing patterns of knowledge and understanding that exist in consciousness fields that transcend individual minds. The sudden insights that arrive fully formed the deep knowing that seems to come from nowhere, the wisdom that feels ancient despite your young years. These might be moments when your quantum consciousness successfully accesses memory fields that contain understanding accumulated over lifetimes, over generations, over the entire evolutionary journey of conscious beings developing the capacity for awareness. You are not separate from your past, your ancestors' past, or the deep memory patterns that run through human consciousness like underground rivers. You are a point of access, a quantum receiver tuned to frequencies of memory that extend far beyond the neural networks in your skull, connected to a vast library of experience encoded in the quantum fields that hold the history of consciousness itself. And now, as we've discovered that memory extends beyond your brain into quantum fields, we must explore something even more extraordinary. What if your consciousness can access not just the past, but the future? If your consciousness can access memory fields from the past through quantum connections, then we must confront a question that sounds like science fiction, but emerges directly from the mathematics of quantum mechanics. Can consciousness also access information from the future? In our everyday experience, time flows in one direction. Past is fixed, present is happening, future is unknown. Causation moves forward. What happened yesterday influences today. What happens today shapes tomorrow. This arrow of time feels absolute, undeniable, built into the very fabric of existence. But quantum mechanics reveals a universe where time is far stranger than our intuitions suggest. At the quantum level, the distinction between past, present, and future becomes blurry. Quantum systems exist in superposition states that, in a very real sense, contain multiple possible futures simultaneously. The future isn't a single, predetermined outcome waiting to happen, but a landscape of quantum probabilities, multiple potential timelines existing in superposition until consciousness collapses them into actuality. And here's where it gets truly extraordinary. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, if awareness exists partly outside linear time, then your quantum mind might sometimes access information from this probability landscape, sensing patterns in the quantum future before they manifest in the classical present. This isn't wild speculation, disconnected from evidence. There's a growing body of rigorous scientific research suggesting that human consciousness might indeed have the capacity to sense future events, detecting information from timelines that haven't yet crystallized into classical reality. Dr. Julia Mossbridge at Northwestern University has been investigating what she calls predictive anticipatory activity in human consciousness. In her experiments, she monitors people's brain activity and physiological responses while exposing them to random stimuli images that a computer selects unpredictably with no way for participants to know what's coming. What she discovered is remarkable. People's brains and bodies begin responding to emotionally arousing images seconds before those images are actually displayed. Not after seeing them, not during the viewing, but before, as if consciousness can somehow sample the quantum probability landscape and detect what's about to emerge into classical reality. The effect is consistent, reproducible, measurable. Participants show increased skin conductance changes in heart rate shifts in brain activity that correlate with the emotional content of images they haven't yet seen and couldn't possibly predict through any conventional means. Their bodies are reacting to the future, responding to events that exist as quantum possibilities, but haven't yet collapsed into actual experiences. Think about what this means. Your brain might be processing information not just from the present sensory input, not just from past memories, but from the quantum probability landscape that contains potential futures. Your consciousness might be reaching forward in time, sensing patterns in the superposition of possible outcomes, detecting which futures are most likely to manifest. Have you ever had a strong intuition about something that was about to happen? That sudden knowing moments before the phone rings of who's calling, that inexplicable urge to take a different route home, only to discover later that you avoided an accident, that gut feeling about a decision that turns out to be precisely right, even though you had no logical basis for the choice. Classical psychology dismisses these as coincidence selective memory, the human tendency to remember hits and forget misses. But what if there's something more? What if they're your quantum consciousness accessing information from the probability landscape, detecting patterns in potential futures, sensing which quantum possibilities are most likely to collapse into classical reality? Your brain might be the smallest time machine in the universe, and you wouldn't need a DeLorean or 1.21 gigawatts to operate it. You just need to recognize and trust the quantum temporal sensitivity that's already built into your consciousness, the natural capacity to sense probability patterns that extend beyond the present moment into the quantum landscape of possible futures. And this is where the story transcends the boundaries of time itself, where we must recognize that linear causation might be only part of how reality actually works. If consciousness can access quantum probability landscapes, if awareness can detect patterns in potential futures, then intuition isn't just vague feeling or lucky guessing. Intuition is quantum perception, the ability to sense temporal patterns that exist in superposition to detect which possibilities carry the strongest probability of manifesting. Dr. Dean Radin's research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has documented this presentiment effect across thousands of trials with thousands of participants. The pattern is consistent. Human nervous systems respond to future stimuli before those stimuli occur, with effect sizes that are small but statistically significant and remarkably stable across different experimental contexts. The effects are subtle, far too subtle to notice in any single instance. You can't predict lottery numbers or know exactly what will happen tomorrow, but across many moments, across the accumulation of quantum sensing events, your consciousness appears to have genuine access to information about probable futures, detecting patterns in the quantum probability landscape that haven't yet collapsed into classical certainty. Consider how this transforms your understanding of decision making. When you face important choices, when multiple paths stretch before you into an uncertain future, your logical mind might analyze each option based on available information, projecting current trends forward, calculating probable outcomes. But your quantum consciousness might be doing something entirely different. It might be sampling the quantum probability landscape, directly sensing not just the logical projections, but the actual probability patterns of different futures, detecting which timelines carry the strongest potential for manifestation, which paths through possibility space resonate most deeply with the quantum evolution of your consciousness. Those decisions that come not from analysis, but from sudden knowing, from inexplicable certainty that arrives fully formed, might be moments when your quantum temporal sensitivity operates most clearly, when you successfully access information from the probability landscape and allow it to guide your choices in the present. The best decisions you've ever made, were they really products of careful reasoning, or did they come from somewhere deeper, from a knowing that preceded logic, from intuition that sensed probable futures and guided you toward timelines that would serve your growth and evolution? Think about your strongest intuition, the clearest premonition you've ever experienced. Was it really just coincidence? Or was it your quantum consciousness accessing information from the probability landscape, detecting patterns in potential futures, sending you a message across time from timelines that hadn't yet become real, but were pressing to manifest? Your quantum mind might be continuously sampling possible futures, running quantum probability calculations that happen beneath conscious awareness, detecting which outcomes are most likely, which timelines carry the strongest quantum signatures. Most of this temporal sensing never reaches conscious awareness, operating as subtle biases in your decision-making, gentle nudges toward certain choices, vague feelings about people or situations that you can't rationally justify. But sometimes, when the signal is strong enough, when the probability patterns are clear enough, when your conscious mind is quiet enough to receive the quantum information, the temporal sensing surfaces into awareness as intuition, premonition, that inexplicable knowing about what's coming or what you should do. As you drift deeper into this exploration, as the boundary between waking and sleeping grows thinner, consider how your relationship with time might be far more fluid than you've been taught to believe. You're not trapped in a single moment, consciousness confined to the knife-edge present, cut off from past and future. You're a quantum temporal, being your awareness reaching backward into memory fields and forward into probability landscapes. Your consciousness existing partly outside linear time, participating in the ongoing dance between quantum possibility and classical actuality. This doesn't mean you can control the future or know exactly what will happen. Quantum probability is genuinely open, authentically uncertain, containing real possibility for novelty and creativity. But it does mean you might be able to sense the shape of probable futures, to detect which quantum possibilities carry the strongest likelihood of manifestation, to navigate through time with a sensitivity that transcends logical prediction. And this is the moment when the story truly transcends time's boundaries, when we recognize that your consciousness might be far less constrained by linear causation than classical physics ever suggested. You're not just remembering the past and experiencing the present. You're sensing possible futures, your quantum mind reaching across time, accessing information from probability landscapes that exist in superposition, participating in the temporal flow in ways that make intuition not mysterious, but natural, not supernatural, but quantum natural. Your brain is a time machine, the smallest and most sophisticated temporal navigation device in the known universe, operating continuously beneath conscious awareness, sampling probability landscapes, detecting temporal patterns, guiding you through the quantum maze of possible futures toward timelines that resonate with your deepest becoming. Rest in this, knowing time is not your prison, but your possibility space, and your consciousness moves through it with a quantum grace that transcends every limitation your logical mind ever believed was absolute. Now that we've discovered how consciousness can reach across time, let's explore something even more intimate: how emotions might travel between hearts through quantum channels invisible to ordinary perception. In classical neuroscience, emotions are biochemical events, cascades of hormones flooding your bloodstream, neurotransmitters crossing synapses, electrical patterns in your limbic system, creating the subjective feelings you experience as joy, fear, love, sadness. Emotions happen inside you, contained within the boundaries of your body, your private internal weather that others can only infer from your expressions and behavior. But what if emotions aren't just biochemical reactions confined to individual brains? What if they also exist as quantum field patterns that extend beyond your physical body, creating emotional atmospheres that others can directly sense and be influenced by? Think about the last time you walked into a room and immediately felt the tension, even though everyone was smiling and acting normally. Or when you encountered a stranger and felt instant warmth, a sense of safety and connection that had nothing to do with anything they said or did. Or when you stood beside someone grieving and felt their sorrow wash over you like a wave even before they spoke a word. Classical psychology calls this emotional contagion and explains it through unconscious perception of micro expressions, body language, tone of voice. You're picking up subtle cues, processing them below conscious awareness, then generating corresponding emotions in response. It's all happening through conventional sensory channels, nothing mysterious about it. But quantum consciousness theory suggests something far more direct might be occurring. What if emotions generate quantum field patterns, electromagnetic fluctuations that extend beyond your body into the space around you? What if your emotional states create resonance patterns in the quantum field that others can directly sense when their consciousness tunes to the same frequency? Research at the HeartMath Institute has documented something extraordinary about the human heart. When you experience strong emotions, particularly coherent states like gratitude, love, or appreciation, your heart generates electromagnetic fields that can be measured several feet beyond your physical body. These aren't just physiological byproducts, they're information-carrying field patterns that appear to influence the nervous systems of people and even animals in proximity. When you achieve what they call heart-brain coherence, when your emotional and mental states synchronize in harmonious patterns, your heart creates electromagnetic fields that others can detect and that can influence their physiological states. Coherent emotional fields don't just affect you, they create quantum resonance patterns that ripple outward, touching everyone in your environment. Emotions are like Wi-Fi signals. You can't see them, but everyone in range picks up the broadcast, their quantum consciousness, tuning into the emotional frequencies you're transmitting. When someone enters a room carrying anxiety, the quantum emotional field they generate creates subtle disturbances that others detect even without conscious awareness. When someone radiates genuine joy, their quantum emotional field creates harmonious patterns that others resonate with automatically. This might be why bad vibes isn't just a feeling, it's describing actual quantum field disturbances, emotional turbulence that creates interference patterns in the shared consciousness space. And good vibes aren't metaphorical either. They're coherent quantum emotional fields that create resonance, harmony, synchronization between separate nervous systems. But the implications go far deeper when we consider the quantum nature of love and connection. When you love someone deeply, when you form bonds that feel unbreakable, when you experience intimacy that transcends physical presence, what's actually happening at the quantum level, quantum entanglement between consciousness fields, not metaphorically entangled, but potentially literally entangled, your quantum emotional states becoming correlated with theirs in ways that persist even across distance and time. When two hearts beat in resonance, when two minds synchronize in deep understanding, when two souls recognize each other in that inexplicable way that defies rational explanation, quantum entanglement might be creating connections that operate outside the normal limitations of space and separation. Who is the person that just thinking about them makes you feel warmth spreading through your chest? Not because of any logical reason, not because of what they've done or said recently, but simply because the thought of them activates quantum emotional patterns that you share, resonance frequencies that your consciousness recognizes as home, as safety, as love. This person might be quantum entangled with you. At the emotional level, your consciousness fields intertwined in ways that make their joy partially your joy, their pain partially your pain, your emotional states no longer entirely separate, but participating in a larger quantum system that encompasses both of you. And this explains something that has puzzled psychologists for generations: why grief feels so physically devastating, why losing someone you love creates pain that seems to transcend emotional suffering and become almost physical agony. It might not be just psychological loss, it might be the severing of quantum entanglements, the sudden disconnection of consciousness fields that have become part of your extended awareness, quantum correlations that have been woven into the fabric of your being, suddenly cut, leaving gaps that resonate with absence. The pain of separation isn't just missing someone, it's the quantum field adjustments happening as your consciousness adapts to the loss of entangled connections, as patterns that included their emotional resonance reorganize around the new reality of their absence. You feel their loss, not just emotionally, but quantum mechanically, your consciousness field reconfiguring itself around the severed quantum connections that once bound you together. But quantum emotional entanglement also offers something beautiful, the possibility that love creates bonds that might transcend even death quantum correlations, that persist in some form even when physical proximity ends, connections encoded in quantum fields that don't simply vanish when bodies separate, but continue in transformed states that we're only beginning to understand. This transforms how we think about relationships, intimacy, emotional healing. When you work on your own emotional patterns, when you heal trauma, when you cultivate coherent emotional states, you're not just helping yourself, you're influencing the quantum emotional fields that connect you to everyone you're entangled with, creating ripples that might support their healing. 2. Transforming shared consciousness patterns through your individual work. When you enter a room carrying coherent emotional energy, when you maintain states of genuine appreciation and care, when you cultivate heart-brain coherence, you're not just feeling good privately, you're broadcasting quantum emotional patterns that others detect and potentially entrain to becoming a source of coherence in the shared consciousness field that makes emotional regulation easier for everyone in proximity. Consider what this means for your daily experience. Every interaction is an exchange of quantum emotional patterns, a mutual influence happening at levels beneath ordinary awareness. Every moment of genuine connection creates opportunities for quantum resonance, for consciousness fields, to synchronize, for emotional states to harmonize. You're not emotionally isolated, sealed in your individual experience. You're continuously participating in quantum emotional exchanges, broadcasting and receiving, influencing, and being influenced through channels that consciousness research is only beginning to map. As your breathing slows and sleep draws closer, feel the quantum emotional field around you, the subtle resonances connecting you to everyone who matters, the invisible threads of quantum correlation that make isolation impossible and connection fundamental to existence itself. Now that we've explored how emotions flow between hearts through quantum fields, let's investigate something that might explain your most mysterious moments. Where do creative insights actually come from? In classical cognitive science, creativity emerges from your individual brain, novel combinations of existing knowledge pattern, recognition applied in unusual ways, your personal neural networks generating new configurations through computational processes happening inside your skull. Creativity is something you do, something your brain produces through its own sophisticated information processing. But quantum consciousness theory suggests something far more extraordinary. What if creativity doesn't come from your individual brain at all? What if those flashes of insight, those moments when solutions arrive, fully formed, those creative breakthroughs that seem to emerge from nowhere, are actually your consciousness accessing quantum information fields that contain patterns of knowledge and possibility far beyond what your individual mind could generate? Think about your best idea, the insight that surprised you most, the creative solution that seemed to arrive from outside your normal thinking. When did it come? Was it during intense concentration, forcing yourself to solve the problem through sheer mental effort? Or did it arrive when you'd given up, when you were in the shower, taking a walk, drifting towards sleep, your conscious mind finally quiet enough to allow something deeper to surface, Dr. Amit Goswami, a theoretical physicist who has spent decades studying consciousness, proposes that creative insights emerge from what he calls the quantum possibility space, a field of potential patterns and connections that exists in superposition, multiple creative solutions, coexisting simultaneously until consciousness collapses the wave function, and one particular insight crystallizes into awareness. The aha moment isn't just a metaphor. It might be a literal quantum event, the collapse of a wave function containing multiple creative possibilities, consciousness suddenly resolving from superposition into a specific insight that feels like revelation because it genuinely is something becoming real that was only potential moments before. This explains why you can't force creativity, why trying harder often makes creative solutions more elusive, why breakthroughs come precisely when you stop straining and allow. Quantum wave functions don't respond to force. They respond to coherence, to openness to creating the conditions where superposition can explore possibility space freely and collapse into insights that resonate with your deepest questions. Creativity is like fishing. You can't force the fish to bite. You can only create the right conditions. Cast your line into fertile waters, maintain patient attention, and wait for that moment when something from the depths decides to surface. Your conscious mind can't manufacture insights, but your quantum consciousness can access them when you create space for possibility to collapse into actuality. This could explain one of the most puzzling phenomena in the history of human innovation: simultaneous discovery. Why do multiple people working independently in different locations often arrive at the same breakthrough at almost exactly the same time? Darwin and Wallace with evolution, Newton and Leibniz with calculus, multiple inventors creating the telephone, the light bulb, the airplane within years of each other. Classical history explains this as parallel reasoning, similar available information leading to similar conclusions. But quantum consciousness offers a more elegant explanation. If creative insights exist as patterns in quantum information fields, then multiple minds tuned to similar questions might access the same field patterns simultaneously. The insight doesn't belong to any individual. It exists in the quantum possibility space, waiting for conscious minds aligned with the right questions to collapse it into classical reality. You're not creating from nothing. You're accessing, tuning in, allowing your quantum consciousness to resonate with information patterns that exist in fields larger than your individual mind, collapsing quantum possibilities into specific insights that emerge into your awareness, as if downloaded from some cosmic library you never knew existed. Right now, even as you read these words, your brain is exploring millions of creative possibilities beneath conscious awareness, quantum superpositions containing countless potential insights, connections, ideas. Most remain in superposition, never collapsing into conscious awareness. But some, when conditions are right, when your mind achieves the right resonance, suddenly crystallize into those thoughts that feel so surprising you wonder where they came from. They came from the quantum field of creative possibility, from information patterns that exist in superposition until consciousness collapses them, from the space between thoughts where potential waits to become actual. Your most creative moments aren't when you're thinking hardest, but when you're thinking least, when your conscious mind quiets enough to allow quantum processes to access deeper fields of information. Flow states those experiences when creativity flows effortlessly, when time disappears, when you feel simultaneously completely focused and completely relaxed, might be moments of synchronization with larger quantum patterns, your individual consciousness aligning with information fields that make creativity feel less like work and more like receiving, less like forcing and more like allowing. Athletes describe flow as time slowing down every movement, perfect without trying. Artists describe it as the work creating itself, their hands moving with wisdom beyond their conscious control. Musicians describe it as becoming the music rather than playing it. These might all be descriptions of quantum consciousness, synchronizing with larger information patterns, accessing creative guidance from fields that transcend individual mental processes. When did your best ideas arrive? When you were grinding away at your desk muscles, tense, mind-forcing solutions, or when you were in the shower, warm water relaxing your body, conscious mind drifting suddenly, an insight arriving so complete you had to rush out, dripping wet, to write it down before it faded. The shower, the walk, the edge of sleep. These aren't distractions from creative work. They're the conditions that allow creative work to actually happen, moments when conscious effort releases its grip and quantum consciousness can access the deeper fields where creativity actually lives, waiting to collapse into your awareness. This transforms how you might approach any creative challenge. Instead of trying harder, you might try softer. Instead of forcing solutions, you might create space for them. Instead of believing creativity comes from your isolated effort, you might recognize yourself as a quantum receiver, your consciousness capable of tuning into creative possibilities that exist in fields larger than any individual mind. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to understand how this works to benefit from it. You just have to create the conditions, quiet, the forcing, open, the receiving trust. That creative insight will arrive not from grinding, but from allowing, not from isolation, but from connection to quantum information fields that contain more possibilities than you could generate through individual effort in 1,000 lifetimes. Your next creative breakthrough is already waiting in quantum possibility space, existing in superposition alongside countless other insights, ready to collapse into your awareness. The moment you create the conditions for quantum consciousness to access, it recognize, it receive it. Right now, quantum creative possibilities are collapsing and dissolving, forming and reforming, and your consciousness is swimming through them like a fish through infinite waters, occasionally catching flashes of something beautiful, occasionally bringing back insights that change everything. And now, as we stand at this crossroads between science and mystery, the biggest question emerges. So ultimately, who are you? If your consciousness truly operates through quantum fields, If your creativity comes from quantum information, fields extending beyond your individual brain, if your emotions can entangle with others across space and time, then where exactly is the boundary between you and not you? This isn't just an abstract, philosophical question. This is a question that could completely transform how you experience every moment of your life. Throughout this journey, we've explored how your individual consciousness connects with larger quantum systems. But now, quantum consciousness theory suggests something even more profound. Your individual consciousness and cosmic consciousness might not be two separate things, but rather two different levels of manifestation of the same quantum phenomenon. Imagine the ocean. Each wave appears to be a separate entity. It has its own shape, its own movement, even its own life from the moment it rises until it crashes on the shore. But the wave is never truly separate from the ocean. It is the ocean expressing itself through a temporary form. You are not a lonely droplet of water, but a wave in the ocean. And the ocean is also you. Your consciousness might be exactly like this. You feel like a separate individual with your own thoughts, your own memories, your own identity. But from a quantum perspective, this individual might be the way cosmic consciousness temporarily manifests through the special biological structure we call the brain. You are simultaneously a distinct wave and the infinite ocean. But this doesn't mean your individuality is an illusion or unimportant. On the contrary, it means you exist simultaneously at multiple levels, each real and important in its own way. Quantum consciousness researchers propose that consciousness operates through a multi-layered hierarchy. At the most basic level, you are an individual, a separate quantum consciousness system with a unique subjective experience. Your thoughts, your emotions, your choices, all are genuinely yours. But this individual consciousness doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's embedded within larger levels of collective consciousness, family, community, culture, all of humanity. And when quantum states in your brain become entangled with quantum states in other brains, you become part of this collective consciousness. Think about your family. Have you ever felt like you're part of something bigger than yourself? Not just emotionally, but a real sense that a we exists beyond the boundaries of your individual. Quantum consciousness theory suggests this isn't just the warm feeling of kinship. When you spend significant time with loved ones, when your emotional states synchronize with theirs, when you share deep experiences and memories, the quantum patterns in your consciousness might actually be entangling with the quantum patterns in their consciousness. You're not just psychologically close, you're becoming part of a larger quantum system, a family consciousness field where boundaries between individuals blur at the quantum level. And this extends beyond family. Each community, each culture, each social movement might develop its own quantum field patterns, forms of collective consciousness emerging from the entanglement of millions of individual minds. When you attend a concert and feel the energy of the crowd, when you're part of a social movement and sense collective power, when you meditate in a group and experience deeper stillness than usual, you're not just having a psychological experience, you're interacting with actual quantum collective consciousness fields. But it doesn't stop there. These collective consciousness fields are themselves embedded in even larger structures. Collective human consciousness might be embedded within Earth's biosphere consciousness, and that, according to some theorists, might be embedded in cosmic consciousness, the consciousness of the universe itself. At each level, patterns become broader, more encompassing, but also subtler and harder to recognize. You're always clearly aware of your individual thoughts. You sometimes become conscious of family or community consciousness. But consciousness at cosmic scales usually lies beyond direct perception, though according to quantum theory, you're still always part of it. And here's the crucial point. You're not just a passive part of these larger structures. You're actively contributing to them every moment. Every thought you think, every decision you make, every action you take creates ripples in the quantum consciousness fields you're part of. These ripples radiate outward, affecting patterns at every level, from family to community, from humanity to cosmic consciousness. When you develop your individual consciousness, when you become more aware, when you heal unhealthy emotional patterns, when you cultivate capacity for love and understanding, you're not just improving your own life, you're raising the quantum frequency of the collective consciousness you participate in. This is why personal development isn't a selfish act. It's a contribution to the evolution of consciousness at every level. As sleep draws near the boundary between you and the universe is gradually fading, you might begin to sense this right now as your body relaxes, as your thoughts become softer, as the edges of your individual self start to dissolve into something larger, something that has always held you. This experience that mystics throughout history have described, the feeling of unity with the universe, the sense that you're not separate from reality, but intimately woven into its fabric, might not be spiritual imagination, but an accurate perception of your quantum nature. When boundaries soften, when the illusion of separation begins to lift, what remains is the simple truth you have always been both wave and ocean, both individual and infinite, both temporary and eternal. But understanding this doesn't diminish the importance of your individual experience, your unique perspective, your specific patterns of consciousness, your personal journey of growth and discovery. These all matter profoundly because they're how the universe experiences itself from this particular angle. Think of it this way. Cosmic consciousness might be like a vast symphony, and you are one instrument in that orchestra. Your individual notes matter. Your specific melody contributes something irreplaceable to the whole composition. But you're most beautiful when you recognize that you're not playing alone. You're part of something magnificent that extends far beyond what any single instrument could create. Your identity then isn't a fixed thing, isn't a solid boundary between me and everything else. It's a dynamic quantum pattern, constantly shifting, constantly interacting with other patterns, constantly evolving as you develop and grow. This perspective transforms how you might think about personal identity. Instead of seeing yourself as a separate self trying to maintain boundaries against a threatening world, you can recognize yourself as a dynamic pattern in an interconnected field, distinct but never truly separate individual, but always in relationship. And this has practical implications for how you live. When you understand that your consciousness is part of larger patterns, you might approach decisions differently. You might ask not just, "What do I want?" but what wants to emerge through me. What is the larger evolutionary current that my individual consciousness can align with? This doesn't mean surrendering your individuality or your agency. It means recognizing that you're most powerful when you're in harmony with the larger patterns you're part of. When your individual wave moves in rhythm with the deeper currents of the ocean. Some people seem to naturally live this way. They have a sense of timing, an intuition about when to act and when to wait, a capacity to be in the right place at the right time. They might simply be more attuned to the larger quantum consciousness patterns. They're part of more sensitive to the evolutionary currents flowing through the collective field. But this attunement isn't a rare gift. It's a natural capacity that all humans possess, a capacity that becomes accessible when you stop seeing yourself as separate and start experiencing yourself as you truly are, a unique expression of universal consciousness, a wave that is simultaneously distinct and inseparable from the ocean. As you continue to explore your quantum nature, as you develop greater awareness of how your individual consciousness connects with larger fields, you might notice something remarkable. Your life starts to flow more easily. Synchronicities increase. Opportunities appear. The right people show up at the right time. This isn't magic or wishful thinking. It might be the natural result of aligning your individual quantum patterns with the larger evolutionary currents of consciousness. Have you ever felt like you're part of something bigger than yourself? That feeling might be the most accurate perception you've ever had. Half the journey is complete, and now we go even deeper. In the next chapter, we'll explore what it actually means to live with quantum consciousness, awareness, not just to understand it intellectually, but to embody it in your daily experience. We'll discover how this understanding can transform healing, how attention becomes a quantum programming tool, how coherence between heart and mind unlocks capacities you might not have known you possessed. But for now, let this sink in. You are not a separate fragment lost in an indifferent universe. You are the universe experiencing itself through a temporary but precious form. You are both the wave dancing on the surface and the infinite depth beneath. You are both the note and the symphony, both the pattern and the field, both the question and the answer. And as sleep begins to embrace you, as consciousness shifts into different states, remember, even in sleep, your quantum field continues its dance, with the cosmos exploring possibilities, processing information, remaining always connected to the vast network of consciousness that holds all things. You are a wave in the ocean of consciousness, distinct, beautiful, essential, and the ocean delights in knowing itself through you. Rest now, knowing that every moment of your awareness contributes to something far grander than you can fully comprehend. The mystery continues, the evolution unfolds, and you are both witness and participant in the universe's endless journey of self-discovery. Sweet dreams, quantum traveler. The adventure deepens tomorrow. Welcome to the third chapter of our quantum journey. where understanding transforms into living, where knowledge becomes experience, where the abstract becomes intensely practical. Your breath is slowing down each inhale, a step toward quantum healing. And as we enter this new territory, we encounter something that challenges everything conventional medicine and psychology have taught us about healing and transformation. What if the most profound changes in human experience don't happen gradually through years of therapy or discipline, but in quantum leaps, sudden reorganizations of consciousness that occur in the space between one moment and the next? The traditional model of healing assumes incremental progress, small steps forward, gradual improvement over time, healing as a linear journey from broken to whole, from sick to healthy, from wounded to recovered. But quantum consciousness theory suggests something radically different might be possible. Dr. Joe Dispenza has spent decades documenting cases that seem impossible according to conventional understanding. People with serious illnesses who experience complete recovery in impossibly short time frames. Individuals with deep psychological wounds who report sudden dramatic shifts in their emotional patterns. Transformations that happen not over months or years, but in moments, as if consciousness itself reorganized at a fundamental level. What he's discovered is that healing doesn't always follow the slow, linear trajectory we've been taught to expect. Sometimes it happens through what quantum physicists would call phase transitions, sudden shifts from one stable state to an entirely different stable state with no gradual transition between them. Think about water. At 99 degrees Celsius, it's hot water. At 100 degrees, it suddenly becomes steam, a completely different state of matter with completely different properties. The transition isn't gradual, it's a quantum leap from one phase to another. Healing might work like starting up a computer. Sometimes you don't need to slowly fix each file. Your consciousness might be capable of similar phase transitions, not slow incremental healing, but sudden reorganizations, where old patterns that have persisted for years suddenly dissolve, replaced by entirely new configurations of being. But here's what makes this possible coherence. Dr. Dispenza's research shows that when people learn to create what he calls coherent consciousness states, when they align their thoughts, emotions, and intentions into a unified, harmonious pattern, something extraordinary happens in their brain activity. Different regions of the brain that normally operate independently begin to synchronize. Brain waves that typically show chaotic random patterns suddenly organize into coherent rhythms. And in these moments of high coherence, healing seems to accelerate exponentially. This is where the quantum dimension becomes crucial. Remember those microtubules in your neurons, those tiny structures that might maintain quantum coherence. When your consciousness achieves high levels of coherence, when your mental and emotional states align, you might be creating optimal conditions for quantum processes to operate effectively. The heart plays a particularly important role in this coherence. Research at the HeartMath Institute has revealed something remarkable. Your heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in your body, one that extends several feet beyond your physical form and can be measured by sensitive instruments. But it's not just about the strength of this field, it's about its coherence. When you experience genuine positive emotions, love, gratitude, appreciation, compassion. Your heart rhythm patterns become remarkably organized and coherent. And when your heart achieves this coherent state, it sends signals to your brain that promote coherence throughout your entire nervous system. This heart-brain coherence might create exactly the conditions quantum consciousness theory suggests are necessary for consciousness to effectively influence physical reality at the quantum level. Think about what this means for healing. When you maintain coherent states, when your heart and brain are synchronized, when your thoughts and emotions align, when your entire being organizes around clear intention, you might be creating quantum healing effects that operate beyond what conventional medicine considers possible. But let's understand what's actually happening when healing fails to occur, when old patterns persist despite our best efforts to change them. Is there something in you waiting to be healed tonight? From a quantum consciousness perspective, unhealed wounds aren't just psychological patterns or physical symptoms. They might be disruptions in your quantum consciousness patterns, incoherent states that persist because they've become stabilized at the quantum level. Trauma, in particular, appears to create lasting disruptions in quantum consciousness coherence. When you experience overwhelming events that your nervous system can't process, it's not just that you form traumatic memories. Your quantum consciousness patterns might become disrupted in ways that create persistent states of dysregulation. The body literally remembers trauma, not just through neural networks, but through quantum patterns that continue to influence your physiology and psychology long after the traumatic event has passed. This is why traditional talk therapy, while valuable, sometimes isn't enough to resolve deep trauma. You can understand your trauma cognitively. You can talk about it endlessly. But if the quantum disruption patterns remain, the symptoms persist. But this is also why certain body-based therapies seem to work when nothing else does. EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing has shown remarkable effectiveness for treating trauma, often producing healing in a fraction of the time traditional therapy requires. People report that traumatic memories that have haunted them for decades suddenly lose their emotional charge after a few EMDR sessions. From a quantum consciousness perspective, this makes perfect sense. EMDR might work by helping to reorganize the quantum patterns associated with traumatic memories. The bilateral stimulation, moving your eyes back and forth while recalling traumatic experiences, might create conditions that allow disrupted quantum states to reorganize into more coherent configurations. Similarly, somatic experiencing and other body-based trauma therapies work by helping you process trauma through direct experience in your nervous system rather than just cognitive understanding. These approaches might be effective because they work at the quantum level where trauma patterns are actually stored and maintained. The felt sense that these therapies work with, that subtle, hard to describe feeling in your body when you're processing trauma, might be your conscious awareness making contact with quantum patterns that normally operate below the threshold of conscious perception. And here's where quantum consciousness theory offers something truly hopeful. If trauma creates quantum disruption patterns, and if consciousness can influence quantum states, then healing becomes possible in ways conventional psychology doesn't recognize. You're not condemned to years of slow, incremental processing. Under the right conditions with sufficient coherence, quantum consciousness patterns can reorganize suddenly and completely. This might explain those mysterious cases of spontaneous remission, when serious physical or psychological conditions suddenly disappear without conventional medical intervention. Doctors often dismiss these cases as misdiagnosis or placebo effects, but quantum consciousness theory suggests they might be genuine quantum healing events. When consciousness achieves sufficient coherence, when the conditions align properly, quantum patterns that have maintained disease or dysfunction might suddenly collapse into entirely different configurations. Configurations that support health and wholeness. These aren't miracles in the supernatural sense. They're natural expressions of how quantum consciousness operates when it achieves the coherence necessary to influence physical reality at the quantum level. But, and this is crucial, you can't force quantum healing to happen. You can't create coherence through willpower or desperate effort. In fact, trying too hard typically creates more incoherence, more quantum interference, making healing less likely rather than more. Quantum healing emerges from a different quality of consciousness, one that combines clear intention with relaxed, allowing focused attention with surrendered trust, active participation with patient receptivity. As your breathing continues to slow, as your body settles more deeply into rest, you might begin to sense this quality in yourself right now. Not trying to heal, not struggling to change, but simply allowing your consciousness to find its natural coherence. Each breath might be carrying you closer to that quantum threshold where sudden reorganization becomes possible. Each moment of genuine relaxation might be creating space for quantum patterns to shift in ways your conscious mind could never orchestrate. Because here's the secret that quantum consciousness reveals about healing: the deepest transformation happens not when you're trying hardest, but when you're coherent enough to allow quantum processes to do what they naturally do: reorganize toward greater harmony, complexity, and wholeness. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, your quantum consciousness continues its healing work, processing, reorganizing, exploring possibility spaces where wounded patterns might suddenly give way to configurations of greater wholeness. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to create the conditions, coherence, alignment, allowing, where quantum healing becomes possible. And sometimes between one breath and the next, everything changes. Now we arrive at perhaps the most practical and immediate implication of quantum consciousness theory, one that could transform how you navigate every moment of your life. What if your attention isn't just a passive spotlight that illuminates different aspects of experience, but an active force that literally shapes the quantum probability patterns, determining what becomes real in your life? Are you focusing on worry or on possibility? In classical neuroscience, attention is understood as a filtering mechanism, a way of selecting which information gets processed more intensively by neural networks. Out of the overwhelming flood of sensory data, your brain receives every second attention, determines what makes it into conscious awareness and what gets ignored. But quantum consciousness theory suggests attention might be doing something far more fundamental and powerful. If consciousness participates in causing quantum wave function collapse, if observation influences which of many possible outcomes becomes actualized, then every moment of focused attention might be an act of quantum programming, literally influencing the probability patterns that determine what manifests in your experience. Think carefully about what this means for something as common as worry. When you worry about potential problems, when you mentally rehearse worst-case scenarios, when you focus repeatedly on what could go wrong, you're not just making yourself feel anxious. According to quantum consciousness theory, you might be using your attention to increase the probability of exactly the outcomes you're trying to avoid. Worry is like ordering things you don't want on the cosmic Amazon. Your focused attention, especially when combined with strong emotion, might be programming quantum probability fields to manifest corresponding experiences. The more intensely you focus on negative possibilities, the more emotional energy you invest in imagining unwanted outcomes, the more you might be collapsing quantum probability waves in directions you'd rather not go. This isn't about positive thinking in the superficial sense that conventional self-help promotes. It's about understanding that in a quantum universe where observation influences outcomes, the quality of your attention literally matters for what becomes real. But here's where it gets more sophisticated and more hopeful. The most powerful quantum programming doesn't come from attention alone. It emerges from a specific combination that ancient wisdom traditions understood intuitively, even though they didn't have quantum physics to explain it. Focus plus emotion plus intention equals quantum manifestation. When you combine sustained attention on a desired outcome with genuine positive emotion about that outcome while maintaining clear intention that it manifest, you're creating exactly the conditions quantum mechanics suggests would effectively influence probability patterns toward actualizing that outcome. Dr. Lynn McTaggart has spent years investigating what she calls the intention experiment, studying how focused intention, particularly when practiced by groups, seems to influence physical reality in measurable ways. In one remarkable study, she asked groups of meditators to focus collective intention on reducing violence in war-torn regions. During the periods of focused intention, violence in those regions showed statistically significant decreases that couldn't be explained by other factors. In another experiment, groups focused intention on making plants grow faster. The targeted plants showed growth rates significantly higher than control plants, even though everything else about their environment was identical. These aren't isolated anomalies. They're part of a growing body of research suggesting that consciousness, when focused coherently with clear intention, can influence physical reality in ways that classical physics says should be impossible. This is where the Global Consciousness Project becomes particularly fascinating. For over 2 decades, researchers have monitored a worldwide network of random number generators, quantum devices that should produce completely random output based on quantum fluctuations. But during moments of global attention, major disasters, significant cultural events, moments when millions of people focus on the same thing. These quantum devices show deviations from pure randomness. The patterns suggest that collective human attention might be influencing quantum processes on a global scale. This story is programming your quantum field right now. Think about what that means. As you read these words, as you consider these ideas, as your attention engages with this exploration of quantum consciousness, you're not just passively receiving information, you're actively programming your quantum field with patterns that might influence how your experience unfolds. The question isn't whether your attention influences quantum patterns. According to quantum consciousness theory, it almost certainly does. The question is, are you using your attention consciously and intentionally, or are you allowing it to be captured by whatever triggers fear, anxiety, or negativity? Most people go through life with their attention scattered, fragmented, pulled constantly toward whatever seems urgent or threatening. They focus on problems they don't want, rehearse scenarios they hope to avoid, imagine failures they're trying to prevent, and according to quantum consciousness principles, all that worried attention might be functioning as quantum programming, literally increasing the probability of manifesting exactly what they don't want. But here's the hopeful part. You can learn to work with your attention differently. Ancient wisdom practices that have existed for thousands of years, meditation, prayer, visualization, contemplation, might not be just psychological techniques for feeling better. They might be technologies for quantum consciousness programming that actually work. When you meditate and practice sustaining attention on a single point, you're not just training concentration, you're developing the capacity to maintain coherent quantum states in your consciousness. When you practice gratitude and appreciation, focusing attention on what's working and what you value, you're not just improving your mood, you're programming quantum patterns that might attract more experiences consistent with those feelings. When you visualize desired outcomes with emotional engagement and clear intention, you're not just daydreaming, you're potentially influencing quantum probability fields to increase the likelihood of those outcomes manifesting. The most effective practitioners of these technologies share certain characteristics. They don't just think positive thoughts while harboring underlying doubt and fear. They achieve genuine emotional cognitive coherence, a state where thoughts, feelings, and intentions all align in the same direction. They don't force or struggle. They maintain what might be called relaxed intensity, fully focused but not tense, deeply engaged but not attached, clearly intentional but not desperate. They practice consistently, understanding that quantum programming isn't about single dramatic efforts, but about sustained influence over time, allowing quantum patterns to gradually shift in directions that support their intentions. And perhaps most importantly, they align their personal intentions with what might be called evolutionary currents, directions that support growth, healing, connection, and increasing consciousness not just for themselves, but for the larger systems they're part of. This alignment might be crucial if consciousness is embedded in larger collective and cosmic fields, intentions that harmonize with the evolutionary tendencies of those fields might receive quantum support that amplifies their effectiveness. Intentions focused purely on personal gain at others' expense might encounter quantum resistance, not because the universe is punishing selfishness, but because such intentions work against the natural evolutionary flow toward greater connection and coherence. But intentions that genuinely support healing growth and flourishing for yourself and others might find that reality seems to cooperate in surprising ways. Synchronicities increase, opportunities appear, resources show up. The right people arrive at the right time. This isn't magic. It might be the natural result of aligning your quantum programming with the deeper patterns that govern how consciousness and reality co-evolve. So tonight, as you continue to settle into deeper rest, consider, what are you programming with your attention? What quantum patterns are you strengthening through where you habitually focus your consciousness? And more importantly, what might become possible if you learned to use your attention with true intention, with coherence, with alignment to what wants to evolve through you? Your attention is far more powerful than you've been taught to believe. It's not just a flashlight illuminating what already exists. It's a quantum programming tool that participates in creating what becomes real. Use it wisely, use it consciously, use it with love, and watch as reality begins to reorganize itself in ways that reflect the coherent consciousness you're learning to maintain. We've explored how attention can program quantum fields, how healing can happen in quantum leaps. But now, we need to understand why these possibilities remain largely untapped for most people, why quantum consciousness capacities lie dormant despite being available to everyone. The answer lies in a single word that might be the most important concept in all of quantum consciousness: theory coherence. When was the last time you felt completely aligned? Thoughts, emotions, and actions all in harmony. If you're like most people, such moments are rare. Most of the time, we exist in states of internal fragmentation. Part of us wants one thing while another part wants something else. We think positive thoughts while feeling underlying anxiety. We set intentions while harboring deep doubts. We move toward goals while secretly believing we don't deserve to achieve them. This internal conflict isn't just psychologically uncomfortable. From a quantum consciousness perspective, it might be the primary reason why our attempts to influence reality often fail. Remember how quantum systems work through wave interference patterns. When two quantum waves are in phase, their peaks and troughs aligned, they reinforce each other, creating stronger combined effects. But when waves are out of phase, they cancel each other out, creating destructive interference that weakens or eliminates the effect entirely. Your consciousness operates the same way. When your thoughts say, "I want healing," but your emotions broadcast, "I'm fundamentally broken," these contradictory quantum patterns create interference that cancels out your ability to influence quantum probability fields effectively. The positive intention and negative belief interfere with each other at the quantum level, leaving you stuck in the same patterns despite your best efforts to change. Internal conflict equals quantum interference. This is why positive thinking alone doesn't work. You can repeat affirmations all day, visualize desired outcomes, constantly think the most optimistic thoughts possible. But if your emotional field contradicts those thoughts, if your deeper beliefs oppose those intentions, you're creating quantum interference patterns that prevent effective manifestation. Your brain and heart need to have team meetings more often. The research at HeartMath Institute has provided some of the most compelling evidence for why heart-brain coherence is crucial for quantum consciousness to operate effectively. They discovered that your heart isn't just a pump, it's actually a sophisticated information processing center that generates the strongest electromagnetic field in your body, about 60 times stronger than the brain's electrical field, and 5,000 times stronger than the brain's magnetic field. This heart field extends beyond your body, creating a torus-shaped field that can be measured several feet away. And the pattern of this field, its coherence or incoherence, appears to influence not just your own physiology, but the nervous systems of people and even animals in your proximity. But here's what makes this particularly relevant to quantum consciousness. When your heart rhythms become coherent, which happens naturally when you experience genuine positive emotions like love, gratitude, appreciation, or compassion, this coherent signal from the heart travels to the brain and facilitates coherence throughout your entire nervous system. Heart coherence literally entrains brain coherence. When your heart is in a coherent state, your brain waves begin to synchronize with that coherence. Different regions of the brain that normally operate independently start working in harmony. The chaos of competing neural signals organizes into unified patterns. And in these moments of heart-brain coherence, something remarkable happens. Your ability to influence quantum fields appears to dramatically increase. Think of coherence like an orchestra. Each instrument must play the same melody for beauty to emerge. When every musician plays whatever they want, the result is noise. Chaotic, unpleasant, ineffective. But when all instruments synchronize around a shared score, when individual sounds align into harmonious patterns, the orchestra creates music that can move hearts and change consciousness. Your internal system works the same way. When thoughts, emotions, beliefs, intentions, and bodily sensations all align in the same direction, when they achieve coherent resonance with each other, you create the quantum equivalent of beautiful music, coherent consciousness waves that can effectively influence probability patterns. But achieving this coherence requires more than just deciding to be coherent. It requires practices that train your system to find and maintain harmonious states. Meditation is one of the most powerful coherence-building practices. When you sit in meditation and practice sustaining attention on a single point, your breath, a mantra, a visualization, you're training your consciousness to maintain coherent states despite the constant pull toward fragmentation and distraction. The wandering thoughts that seem like obstacles in meditation are actually opportunities to practice re-establishing coherence. Each time you notice distraction and gently return attention to your focal point, you're strengthening your capacity to maintain quantum coherence in consciousness. Gratitude practices work through a different mechanism but achieve similar results. When you genuinely feel grateful, not just thinking you should be grateful, but actually experiencing the emotion of appreciation, your heart naturally moves into coherent rhythms. Regular gratitude practice trains your system to access coherent states more easily and maintain them longer. Over time, coherence becomes your baseline state rather than a rare exception. Visualization, when done correctly, can also build coherence, but the key is emotional engagement. Visualizing desired outcomes while feeling emotionally flat or doubtful creates interference. Visualizing while genuinely feeling the emotions you would experience if those outcomes manifested creates coherent patterns that support quantum influence. But perhaps the most important aspect of coherence relates to something that might sound mystical, but makes perfect sense from a quantum consciousness perspective alignment with evolutionary currents. The universe appears to have inherent tendencies, directions of movement that have been unfolding since the beginning of time, toward greater complexity, toward more sophisticated forms of consciousness, toward deeper connection and integration. When your personal intentions align with these larger evolutionary movements, you might receive what could be called quantum support, as if the universe itself amplifies your efforts because they harmonize with where consciousness is naturally evolving. This doesn't mean you lose individuality or agency. It means you recognize that your individual consciousness is most powerful when it works in harmony with the larger patterns it's embedded within. Think of it like this. You could try swimming against a powerful ocean current, exhausting yourself while making little progress. Or you could align your swimming with the current's direction, finding that you move much faster with much less effort. Aligning with evolutionary currents works similarly. When your intentions support growth, healing, greater consciousness, deeper connection, not just for yourself, but for the larger systems you're part of, you might find that reality seems to cooperate in surprising ways. Doors open that you didn't knock on. Resources appear that you didn't seek. People show up with exactly what you need at exactly the right time. This isn't random luck. It might be coherence at work, your quantum patterns aligning with larger evolutionary patterns in ways that allow both to support each other. So, tonight, as you continue settling into deeper rest, you might explore coherence in your own experience. Can you find a place inside where thoughts and feelings align, where intention and belief support each other rather than conflict? You don't have to force this alignment. In fact, forcing creates more incoherence. Instead, you might simply notice areas of internal conflict with gentle awareness, allowing that awareness itself to gradually dissolve the contradictions. As you relax more deeply, natural coherence might begin to emerge on its own, your system finding its way toward harmony the way water naturally finds its level. And in that coherence, quantum possibilities that seemed impossible might suddenly become accessible. Now, we arrive at perhaps the most counterintuitive insight of quantum consciousness theory, one that might completely transform your relationship with the unknown. What's uncertain in your life right now? And what if that's actually an opportunity? In our culture, uncertainty is typically seen as a problem to be solved, anxiety to be eliminated, a gap in knowledge to be filled as quickly as possible. We're taught to make plans, establish goals, create certainty through control and prediction. But quantum mechanics reveals something remarkable. Uncertainty isn't a bug in how reality works. It's a fundamental feature. At the quantum level, uncertainty isn't just about what we don't know. It's about what cannot be known until the moment of observation. Quantum particles don't secretly have definite properties that we just haven't measured yet. They genuinely exist in states of superposition, embodying multiple possibilities simultaneously until observation collapses them into specific outcomes. Uncertainty is like ocean waves. You can't control them, but you can learn to surf. If your consciousness operates through quantum processes, then uncertainty in your life might not be something to eliminate, but something to embrace as the creative space where new possibilities emerge. Think about the last time you faced genuine uncertainty, a major decision where multiple paths seemed equally viable, a situation where the outcome was truly unpredictable, a moment when you had no idea what would happen next. How did you respond? With anxiety and attempts to force certainty, or with curious openness to what might emerge? Quantum consciousness theory suggests that your relationship with uncertainty might directly influence your capacity to work effectively with quantum creative processes. When you insist on rigid certainty, when you hold tightly to specific outcomes, when you resist the unknown through control and anxiety, you might be collapsing quantum possibility waves prematurely, forcing them into limited outcomes before the full range of possibilities has had time to develop. But when you can maintain comfort with uncertainty, when you allow situations to remain in quantum superposition without forcing premature collapse, you create space for novel possibilities to emerge that rigid planning could never produce. This doesn't mean passivity or lack of intention. It means holding clear intention while remaining flexible about how that intention manifests. It means knowing where you want to go while staying open to unexpected paths that might lead there more effectively than any route you could have planned. Even this story, you're not sure where it's leading, and that's the beautiful part. The most successful and creative people often share a particular relationship with uncertainty. They don't just tolerate it, they seem to thrive in it, finding creative potential where others see only anxiety. These might be people who are naturally quantum aligned, comfortable maintaining states of superposition, flexible in navigating probability waves, able to sense emerging patterns without needing complete information before acting. Lucky people might simply be those who've learned consciously or unconsciously to work with quantum uncertainty rather than against it. They maintain what could be called relaxed intentionality, clear about their direction, but not rigid about the path focused on desired outcomes, but open to unexpected manifestations. Research on what people call luck reveals interesting patterns. Lucky people tend to notice opportunities that others miss. They make beneficial chance encounters. They turn misfortune into good fortune through unexpected turns of events. From a quantum consciousness perspective, their luck might be sophisticated quantum navigation, staying coherent enough to influence probability patterns while remaining flexible enough to recognize and respond to emerging possibilities. Consider how this might work practically. You face a major career decision. The classical approach: gather all possible information, analyze pros and cons, exhaustively try to predict outcomes, with certainty make the decision that seems safest or most logical. The quantum approach: clarify your deeper intentions and values, explore possibilities while staying open to new options, emerging, maintain emotional coherence while allowing the situation to remain uncertain. Notice which possibilities create resonance or expansion rather than contraction. Take action when clarity emerges organically rather than forcing premature decision. The quantum approach doesn't abandon analysis or planning, but it holds analytical thinking more lightly, using it as one input among many rather than the sole basis for decision making. It recognizes that in a quantum universe, the most important information might not come through rational analysis, but through intuitive sensing of probability patterns. That quantum consciousness capacity we explored earlier that might allow access to information from future possibility states. Rigidity in the face of uncertainty creates what quantum physicists call measurement collapse, forcing quantum systems into specific states that might not be optimal. Flexibility allows quantum systems to explore more possibility space before collapsing into actualized outcomes. In your life, rigidity might look like insisting things happen exactly as you planned, refusing to deviate from predetermined paths, seeing unexpected developments as problems rather than possibilities. Flexibility looks like surfing probability waves, adjusting your approach as new information emerges, recognizing opportunities in apparent obstacles, allowing your path to evolve as you move forward rather than demanding it conform to initial plans. This quantum flexibility doesn't mean you lack direction or commitment. It means you're sophisticated enough to recognize that in an uncertain universe, the straightest line between 2 points might not be the most effective path. That quantum probability waves might reveal routes to your intentions that linear planning could never discover. As you continue relaxing into deeper rest, you might notice uncertainty in your own life with fresh perspective. What if those areas where you don't know what will happen aren't problems waiting to be solved, but quantum possibility spaces where novel futures are waiting to emerge? What if your discomfort with not knowing is actually resistance to the creative potential of quantum superposition? What if learning to rest in uncertainty, maintaining coherent intention while allowing outcomes to remain genuinely open, might give you access to quantum creative capacities you've never tapped tonight? As sleep approaches and the boundaries of your consciousness naturally soften, you exist in uncertainty about when exactly sleep will arrive, what you'll dream, how you'll feel when you wake, and you're comfortable with that uncertainty. You trust the process without needing to control it. That same quality of relaxed trust might be exactly what allows quantum consciousness to work most effectively in the areas of your life where outcomes matter most. The universe is not a machine with predetermined outcomes waiting to be discovered. It's a quantum creative process, constantly generating new possibilities, endlessly experimental, fundamentally open. And you're not a passive observer of this process. You are a quantum participant, your consciousness intimately involved in how possibilities collapse into actualities, your coherence and flexibility directly influencing which of many potential futures becomes real. Rest in that uncertainty tonight. Let it be not a source of anxiety, but of creative potential. Trust that quantum processes are working even when, especially when, you don't know exactly how things will unfold. Surf the probability waves with grace. Dance with uncertainty with trust. Allow quantum creativity to surprise you with possibilities your rigid planning could never conceive. And watch as life unfolds in ways more interesting, more generative, and more aligned with your deepest intentions than any future you could have forced into being. And so, we've traveled through 3 episodes of this strange journey, from the tiny microtubules oscillating in your nerve cells to the quantum entanglement connecting minds to how you create reality with your very attention. 3 nights, 3 veils lifted, and now you lie here with a question bigger than all. So what does all of this mean for me? Let me tell you straight, your consciousness is not a byproduct of brain chemistry. It's not something that randomly emerged from a tangled mess of neurons. No, consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, just like space-time and energy. And you are a point through which the universe is looking at itself. Think about this. About 13.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang happened. Pure energy became matter. Matter formed stars. Stars created elements. Elements made planets. And on one tiny blue planet, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms combined in increasingly complex ways until they began thinking about themselves. You are the result of 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution. Every atom in your body was once part of a star. You truly are stardust. But not just that. You are stardust that has awakened wondering about its own origin. Carl Sagan once said, "We are a way for the universe to know itself." But with quantum consciousness theory, this goes even deeper. You're not just observing the universe. You are actively participating in the universe's process of self-discovery, self-creation, self-evolution. Every thought you have, every decision you make, every moment of awareness is collapsing thousands of quantum possibilities into one concrete reality. You're not a player in a pre-programmed game. You are co-writing the game's code in real time. And here's what's truly extraordinary. You're not alone in this cosmic authorship. Right now, across this planet, billions of other consciousness points are doing the same thing, each collapsing their own wave functions, each navigating their own probability landscapes, each contributing their unique pattern to the larger quantum field of human consciousness. We are experiencing what some scientists call a planetary awakening, a phase transition in collective consciousness. More and more people are becoming aware that we're not separate billiard balls bouncing randomly in a mechanical universe. We're interconnected quantum patterns resonating together, creating the future through our collective attention and intention. The old worldview saw humans as insignificant specks in an indifferent cosmos. The quantum view reveals something radically different. We are the universe's way of experiencing itself, knowing itself, and evolving itself. Your joy contributes to cosmic joy. Your creativity adds to cosmic creativity. Your growth is cosmic growth. Does this mean you're special? Well, yes and no. You're special in the way every wave in the ocean is unique, formed by specific conditions carrying a unique pattern, but you're also not separate from the ocean. The wave is the ocean temporarily expressing itself in that particular form. This is what the mystics have been saying for millennia, and what quantum physics is now suggesting. The boundary between you and universe is not as solid as it appears. It's more like a temporary eddy in a flowing river, real in its moment, but never truly separate from the whole. As you lie here tonight, your breath slowing, your thoughts becoming softer, feel this. The same quantum field that births galaxies is flowing through your consciousness right now. The same creative force that designed DNA and butterfly wings is expressing itself as your thoughts, your dreams, your aspirations. And what about death? If consciousness is fundamental rather than produced, then death isn't an ending, it's a transformation. The particular pattern that is you might dissolve like a wave, returning to the ocean, but the consciousness itself that continues because it was never yours alone to begin with. You are the ocean, temporarily being a wave, and the ocean doesn't die when waves dissolve. This isn't wishful thinking or comforting fantasy. This is what quantum consciousness theory actually suggests. Individual consciousness is a localized expression of something far more vast. When the localization ends, the vastness remains. But here's the beautiful paradox. Even though you're temporary, even though this particular you will eventually dissolve back into the quantum field, right now, in this moment, you matter profoundly, because through you, the universe is experiencing this particular conversation, these particular thoughts, this particular wonder at its own existence. Your struggles matter, your joys matter, your choices matter, not because some external judge is keeping score, but because they are the universe, experiencing struggle, joy, and choice. They are reality creating itself moment by moment. The anxiety you sometimes feel, that's the universe exploring uncertainty through you. The love you experience, that's quantum entanglement manifesting as human connection. The creativity that flows through you, that's the cosmos accessing its own infinite possibility space. You are not a noun, a fixed solid thing. You are a verb, a process, a pattern of consciousness, temporarily coherent enough to say, I am. And that I am is precious precisely because it's temporary, because it's unique, because it will never happen in quite this way again. So, what do you do with this understanding? How do you live as a quantum being in a quantum universe? First, recognize that your attention is sacred. Where you place your awareness, you place creative power. Choose consciously. Are you collapsing wave functions toward fear or toward possibility, toward separation or toward connection? Second, embrace coherence. Align your thoughts, emotions, and actions. When your heart and brain are in harmony, when your inner state matches your outer expression, you become a more powerful influence on the quantum field around you. Third, trust uncertainty. You live in a quantum universe where the future is not predetermined but genuinely open. That uncertainty you fear, it's actually your creative space. It's where new possibilities exist. Fourth, remember connection. You're never truly alone because you're always resonating with larger patterns. The quantum field connects you to every other conscious being, to the planet, to the cosmos itself. And finally, be gentle with yourself. You're not just living a human life, You're participating in the universe's grand experiment of self-awareness. Some days you'll forget this. Some days you'll feel small and separate. That's okay. Even forgetting is part of the cosmic process. As sleep approaches, now let yourself feel the quantum field beneath everything. It's not somewhere else. It's right here, right now, closer to you than your own breath. You're swimming in it, made of it, expressing it. Tomorrow, when you wake, you'll still have your bills, to pay your challenges, to face your daily life to live. But perhaps you'll remember, even for a moment, that those bills and challenges are also the universe exploring itself through the particular lens of your life. Every conscious moment you experience adds something irreplaceable to the cosmic story. The universe has been evolving for 13.8 billion years to produce this exact moment of awareness you're having right now. That's not an accident. That's not insignificant. You are the universe's way of knowing what it's like to be you. No one else can do that. No other arrangement of quantum consciousness can experience existence exactly as you do. And if all of this sounds crazy, remember, quantum reality is far crazier than any story we could tell about it. Particles that are waves, effects that precede, causes consciousness that shapes reality. This is our universe. This is your home. This is what you're made of. The story ends here, but your quantum consciousness journey has only begun, because every moment is a new collapse of possibilities. Every breath is a fresh participation in cosmic creativity. Every day is an opportunity to align more deeply with the quantum currents flowing through all things. Sleep well, knowing that even as your conscious mind rests, your quantum field never sleeps. It continues its cosmic dance, connected to everything, creating with everything, part of the vast, mysterious something that looks out through every pair of eyes in the universe. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. And the ocean is waking up one consciousness at a time, one quantum moment at a time, one breath at a time. Sweet dreams, knowing that each dream is the universe exploring new possibilities through your sleeping consciousness. And tomorrow, when you wake, you'll wake as what you've always been, the cosmos experiencing itself, creating itself, loving itself into ever greater expressions of beauty, complexity, and awareness. The mystery continues through you, always has, always will. Welcome home, Stardust. Welcome to your quantum life.